be a lot of special guests probably.
Yeah, lots and lots of special guests walking through because lack of finding a classroom. It's also going to be some trucks outside if you can hear that.
Everyone else is studying, and that's really obnoxious because we want to use their classrooms.
And seniors don't have to study because we're done. We're just done.
Coasting, running on empty.
Yeah.
But today's topic de la conversation is artificial intelligences, or AI for those who don't know.
So artificial intelligences, when is it life form? It's odd because it reminds me of kind of just the actual sentient life question of when do animals become sentient?
Did you watch the clips that Mr. Christensen emailed out?
No.
Oh, those were good. It was about, it was just their Next Generation clips that were about, did you watch Next Generation ever?
Next Generation. Sorry, yeah.
And so, Picard, and then but it was like Data, the robot was on trial.
Oh, exactly. Property or something?
Yes, is he property or is he life form? And talking about, what are the conditions for it to be life? And then, well, doesn't he meet all those conditions? Like, is he self-aware? Is he, and it was interesting.
And I feel like humans are simply robots, Like,
you're going to have to explain
I'm going to have to explain that a little bit. So, we are just a connection of synapses, and we have brains which are just full of, they're just connections, they're the same kind of connections that a computer has, except they're organic. They're just not metal. So when a computer becomes so complex that it adapts to any situation or something like that, then I don't understand what the difference is between that and a human, really.
Yeah, I guess one of the issues being when will we be able to tell? I mean, maybe there's some definitions. I think one definition that kind of floats out is once a computer thinks it's alive, well then it is because it's self-aware, but at the same time then, well, you're just programming it to think that it's alive.
I don't think it would necessarily be you can program it to think it's alive. It would just be more like it has determined because of situation X and blah 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 computer mumbo jumbo that it's it has determined that it is the equivalent of human life, and that it's just, I don't know.
It's interesting.
There was this really cool QC, questionable content, great comment. He wrote this fake paper. You've told me about this.
Yes, I saw that.
He wrote this fake paper. He probably knows where we're at than I do. He wrote this fake paper of the first artificial intelligence, and they tested it in battery tests.
So in the comic, it's basically, it takes place in a, you could sort of say, parallel version of Earth where just it's pretty much the same. Pop culture is basically the same, except there are robots and they're mass produced and they're artificial intelligence.
They're not even a major, that's not a major part of the
story.
story.
It's
just
a game
a
changer.
thing that's there.
So the main character has a robotic computer who's horrible and hilarious, and then a bunch of the other characters also have robotic computers, and it's just sort of a thing in life. But what Wade was talking about was that he wrote a while ago a fake, in the world of this comic, something that happened 10 years or so before the events of the comic in the present, and about like you were saying, this researcher who was creating a robot, and creating an artificial intelligence, and I don't remember all of it, but running through a battery test, and what was the last thing it asked for?
And the last thing it asked was a glass of champagne and rights, I think, which I think is one of the biggest determinations of whether or not it can consider itself human life.
That it wants rights?
Yeah, that it wants rights.
If it asks for rights, and it knows that rights exist, and it knows that it wants them, then, first of all, who are we to say no?
Yeah.
And then also, if it's self-aware to the point where it realizes its situation is suboptimal and wants a human-like situation, then that seems to be a pretty human trait to want as good, if not better than we've done.
I want to change shift a little bit. Change shift a little bit.
It's still not a thing.
It's still not a thing, but I'm going to keep using it.
Change shift is not what anyone says.
What was I going to say?
I don't know. I knew you were going to change shift.
I was going to change shift. Oh, is it bad for us?
Oh.
We have the class we've talked about before, utopias and dystopias, science fiction, basically.
Basically, like that, the conversation of that class was what had us have the inception to create this. This whole video.
And there's this one question that I felt like we've discussed maybe once or twice in class, but I've never really gotten a satisfying answer from it. Is if we were to create this artificial intelligence race of sentient robots and stuff, first off, do we want to? And secondly, is that bad? I think that's a great thing. Like if we were to create a race that is better than us.
I think yes and no, because there's that idea of like, you know, if you want to grow, if you want to progress, you don't hang out with people who are, like if you want to be a better writer, then you hang out with people who are better writers than you. You don't hang out with people that you're better than, or if you want to be a better scientist, then you hang out with much better scientists, and then it'll rub off on you and force you to progress. And so there's that same idea that if we as a species want to evolve and become better, then we hang out with a species that's better than us and capable of more than us. At the same time, judging by our track record, we don't tend to like things that are, you know, different. I think there are two true downsides to creating some sort of artificial intelligence or creating another species that has similar capabilities as us. Is that, number one, we're probably going to treat it really poorly, meaning it'll get, if it has a human-like emotions of anger and revenge, it'll cut, like, that was the whole thing behind the Matrix, is that there's the robots, we created the robots, we enslaved the robots decided, hey, you know what, we're sick of being enslaved and we're going to revolt and you'll be the slaves. So if we hadn't treated them so badly, theoretically, none of the horrible events in the Matrix would ever have happened. The other downside I can see is that if it just has the human emotion of wanting to be the best and wanting to control.
Is it, this is going to sound horrible, but is it bad that we are exterminated?
Yeah,
Let's pretend that the entire human race is one day replaced with doubly as smart robots who are artificial intelligence and have feelings, etc. Is that a bad thing?
That is one of those, it entirely depends on your perspective. Because from a cosmic or from
like, for me personally, I would hate that.
Yeah.
But as like, it's like a race?
Yeah, are you looking at it on a global scale or are you looking at it on a local scale? Because if it's and global doesn't necessarily mean worldwide. It means like, it can be bigger than that. But like, if it's a local scale, of course it's horrible because like individually, the whole point is survival. That's one of the that is the biggest evolutionary setting. It's just like, we need to survive at any cost. And so naturally, something that will destroy us completely goes against, you know, rule number one of life, as life as a human. But then, from a global scale, I don't know, I mean, from an ecological scale, it'd probably be good for humans to be replaced by things that are doubly smart, because they probably won't screw stuff up as much. From a truly, like, universal scale, it wouldn't matter at all, because it's all just a drop in the bucket anyway. So I don't know, it really depends on your perspective. It can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, it could be not a thing.
I feel like it's a good thing. Like, not like the straight up extermination of humans, that of course is, I guess, necessarily bad, but just to create something that is, to create life, first off, is beautiful. Secondly, to create life that is better than you. I don't know, there's just something about it that just feels right.
Yeah. It's a very parental instinct that you want to create something and you want the best for that thing and you want to pass on yourself. Evolutionarily speaking, that usually means you want to pass on specifically your DNA, you want to pass on yourself as a species.
Exactly.
But in a weird way, even though well,
I feel like that is an evolution of us.
Even though it's not genetically speaking, we are passing on what it is. We, in a certain sense, like, whatever we design is going to be similar to us. It's going to try and ideally think the same way we are, because we're the ones who are designing it. It's really hard. It'd be really hard for us to design something that was completely different. So I think it is very parental and it is evolutionary. Like some could say, it is the next evolution of the human race, is whatever it is we design. Whereas it used to be that the jump was always like mutations in the genes itself, and that was how things progressed. And then humans come around with tools and create this whole new system of doing things where it's not natural selection anymore. It's very unnatural selection, because it's who has the best tools, who has access to the most stuff. In some ways, who's the smartest and is capable of building that stuff. But it's also this very unnatural side. Like, natural selection is pretty much dead. now from the human's point of view, just because there's so much external forces at work.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's the next big shift, is that it's in us creating. The next jump is not humans evolve, humans stop evolving, but then they create something, and the thing they create is the next step in the process.
Do you think AI is good or bad for the world, both in terms of the world like as a universe, like evolutionarily, and for the human race as a race?
I think it's sort of the same feeling that I have about technology in general and scientific advancement, that it's never inherently good or bad. It just is, and it changes things, but you can't really tell whether that change was for the good or for good or for ill until super way far down the road.
Yeah.
Like penicillin, we can say is a good thing because it meant that we survived longer and we stopped dying from things. But at the same time, but then when we live longer, that means that we're more likely to get cancer and get other sorts of disease, and new things happen. Or the car is a great, good invention.
Yeah. What are some any bad
well,
examples of technology?
Probably the biggest one being like the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb, like, what is the plus side of that? We invented the nuclear bomb, and it created a Cold War and created the nuclear threat. At the same time, it ended World War II, which was a war that you could argue would never have been won without one side being completely destroyed, because the Japanese just didn't want to surrender. I might be butchering the history here, so probably, but whatever. But, I mean, there are so many technological advances that you can't tell if it's good or bad until way down the road. And so I think with AI, I think it'll change things significantly. Nothing will ever be the same post-AI, post-singularity, but I cannot think whether it would be good or bad. And I honestly, I don't know if you necessarily, even those things that you can't say, oh, that's good, that's bad, it's so multifaceted that really just advancement is. It's not good or bad, it just is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you say,
I say good.
AI is good, I say you can't say if it's good or bad, it just is.
Okay.
Not that I'm not going to be excited for when it happens. It's going to be awesome, and it is going to change everything forever, and I hope in a good way, but...
I mean, even if it is bad, I'm still going to be, the entire time.
Yeah, go out with a bang.
Bang!
Club out.